I had so many questions about just who I was, if I was gay, or
Mm.
if what I was doing was right, or if I was a good person or not. And that's the whole reason I'm here today, is because I want to make a difference in the world, and I want to help people that are going through this.
Welcome to the Carl Rand Show, a weekly podcast designed to dig into the lives of everyday people. People who are making a positive impact, people who have risen above and overcome obstacles. Insights and stories from ordinary individuals who inspire us all towards the truly extraordinary. Here's your host.
Hey, it's Carla. I just got to talk to Darian Vine-Sargent, and Darian reached out to me because he wanted to share his story and help others. Darian experienced sexual abuse when he was young, ever since he was 5 until he was quite a bit older. He doesn't go into all the details, but he talks quite a bit about it. So this is definitely mature content. This isn't going to be something probably for your kids. Make sure that they're busy somewhere else. Or if something like this has happened to you and you find it could be very triggering for you, you may want to have somebody listen to it with you, or maybe just choose a different time to listen to it, or maybe not listen to it right now, depending on what you're going through. But for any parents who worry that this could happen to their kids, or anybody who's experienced this kind of thing, this is going to be helpful for you. You're going to be able to look at the signs. Darian kind of went through what it was like for him, and having people not believe him, all of that stuff, and how that impacted his life. So he really wanted to share his story to help as many people as possible not experience what he had to go through. Let's get into it. Okay, well, I have Darian Vine-Sargent here with me today, and Darian is 24 years old, and he is going to talk to us today about his story. And Darian, I'm really excited to have you on today. So welcome to the Carl Rand Show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And so, Darian, let's give people a bit of context, because you kind of, we'd sort of connected on Facebook, and we were talking back and forth, and you shared some stuff, and then we got on a call, we talked. And so I really enjoyed talking to you, and I was thinking, man, this guy, Darian, has a lot of stuff that he's learned at only 24. There's a lot of things, a lot of pieces to your puzzle that you've put together already. And you've done a lot of that largely on your own. And so that's really interesting to me, but there's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain in your life, and you have
Absolutely.
not had an easy life. And so you're going to be able to talk to that, and you're going to share that with kind of everybody on this platform for really the first time on a platform like this. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've honestly never really talked to the public about anything like this before, so it's really nice to be here to make a difference for once.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm happy to have you. So Darian, why don't we just give the audience a little bit of context? Can you tell us just a little bit about kind of who you are? Where did you grow up? A little bit about family, school, whatever you feel is relevant.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was born in Medicine Hat. I moved up to Calgary when I was probably, let's say 6, 7, around the end of grade 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we moved to Edson, and I've been from Edson to Medicine Hat back and forth for the past 12 years, 13 years. And I've always felt like I belonged back in the Hat. And This last summer, I finally got to take the steps to actually come down here, and I'll never look back. That's for sure.
Yeah. And for our listeners who don't know where Medicine Hat and Edson and stuff is, that's in my stomping ground, not Medicine Hat, but Edson. But it's in Alberta, Canada. And Medicine Hat is how far from Edson? How far of a drive is that?
Well, depends on how you drive, honestly. But
Right.
My trip is usually around 6 hours, 5.5, depending on the day and the weather. But it's about 756 kilometers
Right.
from one door of my home to the other.
Right. Okay. So you've traveled that road a lot. So tell us a little bit. What does that look like? Kind of going back and forth as a kid.
Oh man. Honestly, I wouldn't change the traveling part for the world. Alberta is probably one of the most beautiful places you could ever go. And knowing a road like that, like my route is usually the 21 over to, I think it's the 40 or something like that, and straight up, straight up, over, straight up. And we take the scenic route every time. And it's just, you can't beat it, really.
Nice. Yeah. So tell me some obstacles then that you've kind of had to go through. Like, we're talking about school, we're talking about family, or just kind of wherever you want to take it from, Darian.
All right. Well, I've always felt like I never fit in, and I feel like that was a part of, being sexually abused as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And, bouncing around from town to town, school to school, you get bullied because you're always the new kid. And, as a kid, people make you think this is a game or this is okay. And, deep down, maybe as a kid, even at that time, I thought, something about this just doesn't quite proper. Something's weird here.
With the sexual
But
stuff you're talking about.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because like they want to make you think that it's okay, so they'll tell you it's a game, right?
Mm.
And being a kid that's curious in nature, as humans are, you kind of think, oh, well, if I can play this game with this people, I can play with other people too. And it just,
Mhm.
it starts a ripple effect. And that's what I want to talk about today is getting to the start, to getting to that rock that started to ripple, essentially, is
Right.
getting down to the root source of it.
Yeah, and Darian, like, to sit here and share with an audience about sexual abuse that happened to you, that's probably a little uncomfortable. And yet, I think the reason that you want to share it is because you know that there's a lot of other people that have experienced it or may end up experiencing it. So how can we prevent it, and how can we make an impact here to do positive good, right?
Absolutely, because being an adult now, like I still have daily problems with it. The long-term effects are going to be obviously differing between the people and the abuse that they went through. But for me, I find it's like PTSD, social anxiety, sometimes depression, just an
Mm.
ongoing feeling that, you're never doing good enough or that you've done something wrong. So I've
Mm.
always been trying to prove to myself, not so much to others, but to myself that, I'm actually worth it and I'm okay,
Mm. Mhm.
So let's see here. I got a bunch of notes made up.
That's okay. Can I just ask you, when did it start? How old were you when it kind of first started, the sexual abuse?
I was about 5 when it started.
Okay.
And that's the thing too, because it didn't start with adults. It started with not necessarily my peers, but the neighborhood kids. I was one of the younger ones of the group
Mm-hmm.
most of my life, which I was used to, and that's it's okay. It's more of a challenge to keep up to the older kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of the oldest kids of our group, which I find is the problem there, because he knew better. He was over 12, 13, and I was just a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder, what did this guy go through to make a kid feel this way and to manipulate someone for over 20 years to believe that they're worth nothing unless they do what they're told.
Mm.
But yeah, I got a bunch of notes here for that.
Yeah, well, go if you want to kind of share from your notes, or if you want to just kind of go off the cuff, or whatever you'd like to do.
I've kind of got 4 or 5 sections. It's how to know that your kid's being abused, how to approach it. Let's see, how to approach it. And then just how to treat your kid when it's going on, because kids are really influential at the time, and it's really delicate situation,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Get into it. I think that'll probably be the most helpful thing, is just, we know what happened to you, and we're sorry it happened to you. But how can we prevent this from happening, and how can we help those who have experienced similar things to what you've experienced, Darian?
Okay, here we go. So if your kid is, kids are curious in nature. As I said earlier, it's a known fact, people in general are curious. So
Mm-hmm.
if your kid is being more curious towards things that are sexual in nature, obviously as a parent, you're going to question it. And maybe you've sent your kid to a new babysitter or a new club at school or even a youth group. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends also on the men in your child's life, because I grew up without a dad. Like I had father figures, but I never had my dad there.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made a big difference in my life when there was actually a guy around to say, hey, you're being a little weird. What's going on? And to actually just generally question the child itself, because I find that mothers are very, I don't want to say that they deny things, but they're very closed-minded sometimes. They don't want to believe that that's happening to their child, even though sometimes the signs are very obvious. And even if their child says something, sometimes maybe they'll deny that and think, maybe my kid's just kind of going somewhere else with this. Maybe they're seeing it on TV or something. But it's really good to always investigate and, have a good communication with your kid.
So if your kid is saying something, don't assume, or doing something weird, don't just be like, oh, kids will be kids. Like maybe question that, ask some questions, maybe get curious about what is going on here, Right.
Absolutely. Because, like, I know as a kid, like, sometimes you don't know that line that there's that line that sometimes you cross. Like, here's a good example: a kid peeing in a flower pot in a mall. They don't know any better, right?
Yeah.
But if someone's kid comes up and starts humping your leg, yeah, there's something maybe a little different there. Maybe they've seen something they shouldn't have, you know? But yeah, sexual actions and words are definitely a big sign. And if you do, you know, catch your kid doing something strange like that, you know, don't get mad at them. Don't make them feel like they've done something wrong, because they haven't. It's not their fault that, you know, maybe they seen something or someone taught them a game. But you know, just generally question and be like, you know, and who taught you that, or where did you learn that, or where did you see that? And most of the time your kid's going to tell you the truth because they trust you. And from there, you know, like I said, follow that ripple, follow that chain till you hit the end of it and you find this root source of it, because, you know, there could be so many other kids having this happen to them. And yeah, it's okay because you're helping your own kid. Yeah, for sure. But what about all the other ones, right? This whole last year was Save the Children. So let's do something about it.
Absolutely.
And you got to always assure your kid, like, the kids are going to deny stuff too. Because when I got caught playing, you know, the game, I was like, well, I was questioned as well. And I said, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just playing a game. And I didn't want to tell anyone because I was scared of, well, being grounded or, you know, getting a spanking, whatever, whatever happens to kids. And just make sure that they know that they can trust you and that it's not their fault and that you're not going to be mad, and follow through with it. Because if you don't have trust in your kid, there's no relationship at all in the first place.
Yeah, be willing to ask those hard questions, I think, right? To say, hey, yeah, where did you see this? Who did that? Or, you know, and if they're kind of hedging, I think most parents can probably figure out a way to get it out of a young kid one way or another, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And like, if you have to take away their friends, because this is how it worked for me. I got caught with my best friend. He's still my best friend to this day. Super good guy. I love this kid. And we got caught playing the game, which we were both taught by the older kid of the group. So we didn't know any better. We just, you know, we thought it was a game. It was okay. And when we got caught, my grandma asked me, she's like, what are you doing? What do you think that you're doing? And yeah, well, she was mad. Obviously, a parent's going to be mad if they find out their kid's in that situation or it's happening to their kid. I would be mad personally. And, well, you know, as a kid, I told her, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just playing a game. And she said that I wasn't allowed to hang out with that friend anymore. So if you take away that possibility that maybe they won't be able to hang out with their friend anymore, maybe they'll tell you. But that's manipulation. I don't really like that either. But, you know, sometimes drastic things need drastic measures too.
Right. Yeah, true.
Especially in a situation like that. And like, you gotta make sure they know how to say no and have a mind of their own. Even as a kid, it's good to have a mind of your own and, you know right from wrong, because it can really save you one day.
And what I tell my kids is I just say, you know, there's some bad people out there that want to hurt you and they want to, you know, have you do bad things. So just make sure that if anybody tries to get you to do something that you don't think is right or that doesn't feel comfortable or right, make sure that you let me know and you say no. It's okay to say no. You don't have to do what anybody tells you to do, even if they're an adult, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And I got another note here, and you got to remember as an adult that sex is a human instinct for sure, but as an adult, not in children. When it's an instinct or a thought like that in children and it's prominent all the time, there's a problem for sure. There's something going on. And, you know, maybe they don't know what that was. Maybe they think it was a game. So ask them what they think it was and, you know, inform them that was sexual. Maybe that is the time for the talk, even if they're 5 years old or 4 years old. It's a talk that's going to happen regardless. So it's better to do it and be safe than to do it down the road and be like, why didn't you tell me this earlier?
And isn't it better to hear it from the parent than from, some older kid or some peer that doesn't have a clue what they're even talking about, Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, yeah, follow the chain of contact. It's just like following COVID stuff. You got to find stuff at the source and cut it off.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Darian. So you kind of talked a little bit about, okay, so what are the signs and how do you sort of help a kid that you think could be in a situation like that? So what would you say is kind of what's the next thing that you'd like to cover?
So I want to cover the judicial system. As much as I know it's controversial to talk about it, it's flawed. It really is. It's he said against her said. As a kid, my babysitter, he said, "Hey, this is a game. Let's play this game. Find a porn video and put it in the VHS, and we'll play this game." Well, I was kind of a smart kid. I knew this was wrong. I knew it wasn't fun, and I didn't want to be there. So I deliberately left that tape in the VCR. And my guardian at the time came home, found it, and was like, "What is going on?" And that is where you got to trust your kids and what they say, because when I told that person that was taking care of me that this is going on, they didn't believe me. And that really, really messes a kid up. And like from there on, I had so many questions about just who I was, if I was gay, or if what I was doing was right, or if I was a good person or not. And that's the whole reason I'm here today, is because I want to make a difference in the world, and I want to help people that are going through this, because I know that if it's me in the best neighborhood in Medicine Hat to this day is happening there, and that's spreading that fast. How bad is it in Calgary? How bad is it in Edmonton? How bad is it in the worst part of the neighborhoods in Medicine Hat? How much worse does it get? And with siblings that I have that are 5, 4, 7, 10, it really makes a big impact in my life, and I don't want to see that happen to them.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like what you said, you got to believe your kid, but whether you want to believe them or not, because you wish it didn't happen, I think a lot of times, parents kind of know, like they're like, oh shoot, or whoever it is, maybe this is happening, but if it is happening and I have to actually face it, what's that going to mean for me? So maybe if I just deny it, then it'll just kind of go away. But you're saying that denying it doesn't actually go away, and it sure can mess you up even further, because you're already feeling bad, like there's something not right. And then you have someone that you trust not believing you. That I could see that being a very difficult situation.
And to top it all off, you're being bullied in school because you're the kid that doesn't fit in. But in school, as the kid that's new and strange, you don't fit in, and you're doing your best to, and it just makes it that much worse, and you don't know what to do. So, some kids, regretfully, I had a really good friend that lived just up the street from me in Medicine Hat. He committed suicide when he was 13. And, there is the thought of it sometimes in people that go through this kind of stuff. I don't doubt that for a second. But, you got to do your best to just keep putting your foot forward every day. But one thing that you got to do is you got to help your child understand, if they're going through something like that you're not mad at them, and that you trust them, and that, communication is key. Believe them. And like, they'll say wild stuff sometimes, but even though it's the craziest stuff you ever heard, sometimes it's super true. And there's definitely a need to break that influence. Wherever that influence is coming in that child's life, it needs to be stopped for sure.
And that could mean probably moving into a different school, possibly homeschooling them, whatever you need to do, do it, and do it quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be scared to seem overprotective, especially like I just got engaged to my girlfriend a couple months ago, or a month ago.
Yeah, congratulations.
And thanks. And that's what I was telling her. I was like, I don't care where a kid goes to school as long as they're safe. And that's the main thing. I don't want to have my children go through anything that I've ever gone through, because that'll break my heart.
Well, it breaks my heart just to hear your story, Darian. And I think a lot of our listeners, it's really hard to hear, but I'm glad that you're taking, the crap, the hurt, the pain, and trying to prevent that from happening to others.
Absolutely.
Hmm. So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
No, no problems.
Yeah.
Always happy to help.
Appreciate that. So what's the next thing that you kind of wanted to cover, Darian, or did you kind of cover it now?
Honestly, I went through all my notes there.
Okay. Good. Because I had some questions,
yeah.
but I didn't want to interrupt you. So
no, yeah, for sure. Shoot.
If you're kind of done, and I don't want to get too much into the judicial system either, because it is controversial, but at the same time, it's my podcast and I can talk about what I want to talk about. So, so what would you say about it? Like you said, it's kind of a joke, or it can be a joke. It ends up being one person's word against the other. So do you think that a lot of abused kids or adults or whatever, sexually abused or otherwise, they end up not getting justice anyways, because the justice system it really shouldn't be, they're not doing their job. Maybe you don't need to talk about that, but do you have a few things that you would like to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are being molested or manipulated, blackmailed in any sort of way to do something sexual that you're not comfortable with, don't be scared for 1 second to, take a screenshot, or even write it down, or just find, if you have an iPod and you're scared to take a screenshot that this person's going to come after you, get your other phone out, take a picture with your other phone. Don't be scared, because that's what these people want. They want you to be scared. And if you're scared, you're going to delete conversations. You're going to deny what happened. No, throw it out there. Put it on Facebook. Don't be scared to show it, because the more evidence you have, the more ammo you have.
Yeah, you got to track everything, every conversation, every time something happens, keep a...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And, as strange as it sounds, if you know something's going to happen and you have no way to stop it at the time, tape it, because there's nothing more solid than video or photographic evidence. It's really hard to Photoshop that stuff without, noticing.
Exactly.
And, it may be traumatic. It may be a terrible event, and it may be life-changing, but for that 10 minutes of, trauma, you could change your own life and so many other people's forever, because you'll put one person away. But, people are not willing to do that, and it's rightfully so. I'd be scared to do that too. But yeah. Evidence. You just got to keep a record of everything. Because if you don't do that, the judicial system is just gonna, it's been manipulated by, as much as I hate to say it, manipulative girls or people that just want money. They'll say, oh, I was raped by this person with no evidence and no proof. And then an innocent man gets sent to jail. And how does that, what happens to people who rape people in jail? They die most of the time, right? So, it is flawed, but sometimes it's rightfully flawed at the same time. So it's a really touchy subject for me, and in my own personal opinion, it's not worth the time or the money, let alone the trauma of reliving it over and over just to have no outcome happen. Just hope karma gets them and put it out there that they're, a predator and they're a problem in this world. And either they'll be outcasted, or people will know everywhere they go, or someone's gonna, take care of them.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's hard because I feel like the justice system fails so many people that are true victims. And yet if somebody tries to do something on their own, then they're considered vigilante, and, this is so horrible. So, and then you get locked up. And so it just makes it very, very difficult. And so when I hear your story, and when I think of other stories that I've heard, because I've heard quite a few stories very similar to this, where, and sometimes the perpetrator gets like a little slap on the wrist, or they get house arrest for a year, maybe 2 years, and then they're out and free again. Right. And it's just like, you just completely, traumatize somebody for the rest of their life. And yet you get a slap on the wrist. Like, what is going on here? So yeah, I get very frustrated with that too, Darian. And, that could be Yeah, I could just sit here and vent all day, but I won't. I won't vent.
Exactly. And
But
like,
yeah.
and that's just the thing. I'm not a man of violence. I'm not crazy or anything like that, but I'm a firm believer in karma, that's for sure. And if you're right with God or whoever you worship, doesn't matter to me, honestly, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We all have heartbeats. We all have souls. We all have feelings.
Mm.
Just be nice to each other.
Mm. Yeah, well, Darian, how did you get through this though? Because I mean, you talked about, this bad stuff that happened, the sexual abuse, and you talked about like how it's kind of messed you up in a lot of ways. And I don't
Oh
doubt
yeah, for
that.
sure.
I don't doubt that. How did you get through it? I mean, here you are, you're willing to share this story. You're wanting to share it to make an impact on other people, to help other people. How did you get from where you were, as you described it, quite messed up, to kind of where you are now, seemingly pretty okay? You're engaged to be married. You seem to be doing pretty good. How did you get through all that?
Well, you got to have a good relationship with God in the first place. Like I said on your post on Facebook the other day, it's the spiritual is your first place you got to get right, because if you know that you're forgiven by God for the things that I have done, which were messed up, I will admit that. And if I have hurt anybody, I'm really sorry, because that was not my intent. But you got to forgive yourself and you got to forgive other people, and you just got to leave it in the past and just know that from there on, when you put your foot down and you stop that from happening, that's the last time that's ever going to happen. And you got to believe that, and you got to follow through with it. And, I've always found life easier if you got a pet around or if you have a hobby of some sort. So I'll build stuff, like I built my coffee table, I build my dog's food dish rack and stuff. And it's rewarding. At the end of the day, you feel so good about yourself because I can lean back and put my feet up on my coffee table that I built. I got a dog that's never going to leave me, because it's hard to get a dog to leave you if you're a decent person.
If you treat them half decently, they'll love you no matter what, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you got, a good pet, a good hobby, good people around you that'll support you. Like, my family's been there for me through thick and thin. And I've put them through hell and back for sure, but that they'll never leave me. They've always got my back. And that's one thing I definitely appreciate. So good family support, dogs or cats, whatever your pet is. I got a gecko even,
oh yeah,
I got him the other day and I'm already in love with him.
Nice.
And just, keep yourself motivated, keep yourself busy, keep moving forward. That's the way of life, one step before the next, right?
Yeah. So based on what you've experienced, if somebody had gone through, sexual abuse, what would you say to them? Would you if, or, maybe they're going through it, or maybe there's a parent who's suspecting their kid's going through, and you've talked about this already, but for somebody who's experienced that trauma and they've maybe never shared it, they've maybe never told anybody, what would you say to them from your experience? What would be the first step that they should do?
Oh man.
I know that's a huge question.
You got to tell people. The first step is always telling people, no matter what, as tough as it is. And you gotta pick the right person too, because
somebody that's going to believe you.
It's so scary when that backfires in your face and people think you're weird. Because I've had friends that I was super close with, and the second I told them about that, never again will I tell people, because, well, I'm telling people now, but people in that kind of group, you got to be able to really, really trust these people. I've had people that were my best friends stab me in the back. And, families where I would go personally. So either mom or dad or brother or sister, because I know I'm the oldest sibling of my 4. So there's me, the eldest besides me, and he's only 10 years old. So it's really hard to talk to my siblings about that. So I'm not gonna, obviously, but my older cousin, he's 4 years older than me. He was part of the group of kids that I was in Medicine Hat here. And, he's the one person I can actually fully talk to about anything. So you got to find your person. Like if you watch Grey's Anatomy, find your person.
Cool. Good. Well, thanks so much, Darian, for sharing. I hope that this will be helpful. I know it'll be triggering probably for a lot of people, but hopefully it will be helpful in one way. And I'm thinking especially for parents, particularly parents, moms, and dads, to just be able to hear this and be like, oh, maybe this is something I need to watch. And maybe it's okay to be the mom or dad that doesn't let your kid go for sleepovers, especially in certain situations.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's okay to look like the overprotective parent. Maybe that's actually not a bad thing to be a little overprotective sometimes. Do you have any last words, Darian, before we kind of wrap this up? I mean, you already said.
Not really.
Okay.
If anybody needs any more, advice, or if they want to hear more about my story, or just, talk to me in general, I'm on Facebook. I have Instagram. I'm always available.
Okay. Thanks, Darian. So that's the best place for them to connect with you if they do want to connect. Thanks again for sharing your story, Darian. I know it's a difficult thing, but I just really appreciate you taking the time so that we can make an impact and help other people based on what you've gone through so that other people don't have to go through the same thing.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Darian.
As long as people keep moving forward, just one step at a time.
Right.
Even if it's baby steps.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Darian.
All right. Thanks, Carla.
This episode is brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. We are a tight-knit fitness community, and we guide you every step of the way to get fit and stay fit through our live workouts, nutrition coaching, and incredible support team. Go to powerfitnessedson.com to learn more. Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a positive review on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I would love to see your comments. I would love to know what you think about this episode and interact with you. I love hearing from you. Once again, I'm Carla Rand, and this is The Carla Rand Show, and I can't wait to see you next week for our next episode.